Hello, Sunderland fans. James Copley here. I am joined today by Graham Falk. Graham, we're going to be doing something a little bit different today, a little bit of a joint endeavour. Please tell us who you are and what you're about and what your podcast is.
For those who don't know, which is probably loads of people, and they're doing the right thing by not listening. It's I post obviously What the Falk podcast. We do something previews, reviews, reactions. I also work as a journalist, but not when it comes to Sunderland because I'm not very good at it, and I'm far too opinionated and passionate. But no, James, yeah, that's what I do. If you listen to it, brilliant. Thanks very much. If you don't, congratulations, you made the right decision.
Happy days, a little bit of cross promotion. We love it. We love it. We were both at Hull City on Boxing Day, Graham. You were able to be in that superb away end and probably have a couple of pints. I had to work, which is a privilege. It's very good, very fun. I had a whale of a time, but I was a little bit jealous when I saw the photos and the videos rolling in this morning. It looked like a good one.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I posted a photo this morning, which is obviously on the Sunderland Echo article of the photos of the fans yesterday. I got my mush snapped, which is always nice. But look, we both know what it's like in the press box. I know a lot of people won't know what it's like, and it's always a privilege. It's always an absolute pleasure. But I think when you're a fan of a club, I can understand a little bit why you were jealous of not being in that away end yesterday, because I'm sure we'll get onto it. But when Jack Clark bagged that goal late on, it took off. Sunderland away ends are always good, but that was right up there with the best. I think those who go every single away game will attest that Burnley away, I think, last year was really, really good on the Friday night. That was a really good night, despite the fact that we didn't score any goals and they didn't score any either. But last night was sort of right up there, I think, because, and again, I'm sure we'll get into it, but Saturday was verging on toxic, and I think that was a collective agreement from a lot of people. And to put in a performance like that from the players, you know, the management team as well, and also the fans to really get up for yesterday when it would have been quite easy to not get up for it, I think is testament to what a fantastic football club we really are.
No, absolutely. And let's get into it, really. You touched upon it there, but I was at Coventry at the Stadium of Light on Saturday. That was bordering on toxic. One of the most questionable atmospheres I think I've witnessed at the Stadium of Light in a long time. My mind went back to, and there will be other examples along the way, but my mind sort of went back to Steve Bruce when he lost to Wigan at the end of his tenure at the Stadium of Light. It was that sort of feeling. Obviously, there were substitutes being jeered off the pitch. Apparently, there was a smattering of boos for Beale when he was announced over the PA at the beginning of the game. I didn't hear that personally, but having spoken to people, apparently it definitely did happen. Then it doesn't help you get smashed 3-0 by Coventry. Sunderland and Coventry don't really like each other. Then you had the Tony Mowbray chance. I thought Michael Beale dealt with that really well. He said that Sunderland fans were obviously entitled to voice their opinion, and that he understood the sort of love for Tony Mowbray because he's a good communicator and a popular figure. So I thought he positioned himself well there and handled himself well. But Graham, it is always about the results, and boy, did he need that Jack Clark goal against Hull.
Oh, massively. I think if Jack Clark doesn't put that in, we're probably having a very different conversation where we're going, well,
Absolutely.
That was Plymouth away, that was Stoke away, that was Swansea away, that was every performance the whole season, because it was. Look, and for a lot of the games, Sunderland lacked the cutting edge. For a lot of the game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It didn't feel that much different to every other away game we've played in terms of how we played the possession. I think we played a little bit better defensively. I think we dropped a little deeper. We looked a little bit more solid. You can tell he's had a little bit of work on the training pitch in terms of making it more solid and coming up against the opposition that we did, because I think Hull are a really good side and I think their position proves that. But look, if Jack Clark doesn't cut in and bang that in with his right foot, then we'd have a different conversation. But, you know, he did. And I think that kind of performance, we're not used to that kind of performance. Was it perfect? No, it had flaws in it, but it had a lot of positives. I think a lot of the performances had a lot of positives. What they haven't had is goals. And I think he got one yesterday, which is perfect, but I think he massively needed it. Look, I've been very vocal in my thoughts and opinions on Michael Beale, and the reason for that being, you know, I work up here in Scotland. I work for the Scotsman. I see what is written about him. There's a lot of people I know that have encountered him, and for me, he's not the right man. But you want to change my opinion on that? Keep getting 1-0 wins away from home and winning games. Yeah, like there's one language in football, and you know, people say I don't like how he speaks, and I personally don't like the Lee Johnsonisms that he has. I prefer your Tony Mowbrays and, dare I say it, your Alex Neils, like straight talking sort of football men. But at the end of the day, the best language in football is 3 points and winning games. And if Michael Beale wins the next three and then wins that game, that little small game on January the 6th, I'm pretty sure I'll be all about Beale Ball and tell you he's the best communicator on the planet. So very fickle football fans, very fickle.
It's interesting this comparison that Michael Beale's had to Lee Johnson, and I do understand it in a sense that possibly they do speak in a broadly similar accent. Perhaps they're both definitely head coaches. I think they both sort of buy into the director of football model. They're both like the data and stuff. But in terms of communication, and I don't know whether he's sort of playing this down because he realizes, and I haven't watched too many of his interviews at QPR or Rangers, but I'm yet to sort of see and hear, I know it's early days, that sort of Lee Johnsonisms that we all got really tired of. Yes, it is early days, and we might sort of grow weary of hearing it when it does eventually come out. But it's interesting you mentioned that, Graham, because I'm actually yet to hear that from Bale. And I think he's a very different communicator to Tony Mowbray, that's for sure. But I haven't been listening to him in the press conferences and in his opening press conference as well at the academy. I haven't thought, well, to be brutally honest, I haven't thought like he's a bluffer or he's just saying stuff for the sake of it. Was that something that came across at Rangers?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting.
I mean, it was less so. I mean, there was no Sharks on Monday chat. Like, I think Lee Johnson verges on the bizarre and almost funny. I mean, for people like me and you, being Sunderland fans is quite unfortunate because otherwise Lee Johnson would have been a journalist dream because he's hilarious. He is genuinely quite funny, and I don't think Michael Beale really has that. He's more that sort of middle management KPI, so to speak, that we're used to in if you work in a call center or something, that or places where even ourselves and whatnot. And sometimes as a football fan, you don't really want to hear that. But one thing I would say about Michael Beale, and obviously I spoke to Scott from This Is Ibrox, which is a really good Rangers podcast, one of my really good friends, prior to his first game. And he offered a lot of reasons as to why, people didn't really like the way that he spoke always and the contradictions he felt he'd come up with. But he made a really good point at the end, and I'm pretty certain that he's accurate with it. For all the things I want to throw at Michael Beale from his time at Rangers, his time at QPR, my thoughts on his appointment as Sunderland manager, I do kind of feel like he can't have had the experience he had at Rangers. And look, Rangers are so all-encompassing. I mean, Sunderland are massive. I love Sunderland. Sunderland's my club. There always will be. But up here, Rangers and Celtic is just, I mean, it's
well, you
crazy.
can't lose a game. You can't really lose a game if you're Rangers manager, can you?
No, you just can't. And I mean, that's why the 72% win record's not even looked at, because you can beat the teams that are not Celtic. But if you don't beat Celtic, and then if dare I say it, you get beat of Aberdeen as they did, it's a different thing entirely. But one thing he'll learn from that, you can't be in a situation like that, which he'll remember for the rest of his life. And he had the 3 years as assistant and seen Gerrard go through stuff as well. You can't not learn stuff. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean that he's gone, I can take all the flack. I think he's gone, maybe I've done things differently. If he's not, then he's definitely the wrong man for Sunderland. But I think he will. And I think in the way that he communicates, I really liked yesterday that he communicated. He could have been at the front fist pumping and doing a Lee Johnsonism. He didn't. He sat back, let the players take it. I didn't notice until afterwards. And I was in row 1 yesterday. I didn't even notice he was there till I watched the video back and I see him hugging Jack Clark, Triantis. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's good. The best thing he can do is put it on the players when we win.
It's really interesting you should say that, because I had exactly the same thought, having sort of watched the videos back. I thought I spied it at the time, but I was quite far away at the back of the stand. But after the couple of weeks he's had, there's been a lot of noise. The Sunderland fans were chanting for Tony Mowbray in his first game. He lost his first game. There's been a boatload of pundit noise from Graham Souness, Chris Sutton. It's been mad. Simon Jordan's pitched in, all of the ex-Rangers boys. He's took a hammer and he's took some flack. You could have forgiven him for running up and down the touchline, fist pumping and crotch chopping or something, because he's had a serious couple of weeks, but he was very understated, as you mentioned, Graham. Very understated indeed. When the full-time whistle goes, he congratulates his staff, and I think Mike Dodds comes up to him. But I noticed that he was very muted, and I think that's probably telling.
Yeah, I think massively, and I think he knows he's got a big game on Friday. And we talk about results and how important they are. He loses that on Friday, he's back to
square one.
Yeah, enemy number one, and we can't win games away from home, and that was papering over cracks at Hull. At the minute, he's good. But I liked it. I did like it. And look, I'm not won over. God, please let me be won over, because I really want to be. Because any of us want across the fan base of Sunderland to be successful. I don't know anyone who doesn't. But I think it was quite telling, because I think for me, we've seen a few managers like over the years where the pressure valve has been kind of released when they've won a game and they've exploded. Even going back to Martin O'Neill on his first game, he's 1-0 down with 5 minutes to go.
Oh, Blackburn! What a day that was. That was over. Was that over Christmas time as well? Wasn't it? It was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a great day. We were unbeaten for about 3 months after that.
Seb Larson got the winner, didn't he? That was a fantastic day. That was a bloody cold day. I remember that being really cold in the stadium.
It was a very, very cold day. But you see it. Like, you see the pressure valves released, I think, with a lot of managers, and I think it's quite telling that Beale's had more pressure than I've ever seen a new Sunderland manager get, to be honest with you. You 100%. Touched on the Steve Bruce feeling against Wigan. To me, it felt like Poyet in the 4-0. There was parts where it felt like, look, I'll be honest, I called some of the players out on Saturday. I don't think they put the effort in for him either on Saturday. I thought Ekwa was borderline abysmal. And the effort
I mean, chalk and cheese. Ekwa against Coventry City to Ekwa against Hull City was crazy.
I mean, I'm pretty certain he must listen to my podcast, because I absolutely slaughtered him after that, and he had a great game yesterday. But I think the big thing, and I said it in the car coming back yesterday to Ashley on the way back, I says, look, today was needed for the football club, I think, because, yeah, the bond with Michael Beale's not there, and it's going to take a while to get the bond, I think. 3 wins in a row, I think it's not that long, but it'll take a decent run to get people on board, I think. And one thing that has been damaged a little bit recently, and it's took a while to get there, is maybe the relationship the fans have had with the players, which is in the last 2 and a bit years, or at least the last 18 months, across the board, been excellent.
Yeah.
We've seen that relationship crack a little bit on Saturday. And I think even before we scored yesterday, people were singing that Abdullah Bar song, and I thought that was quite telling, because, look, he's had a horrendous couple of days. And it's getting to a point where Abdullah's been here for a year now, and I'm yet to see any real progression of where he actually plays. But the fans backed him, and I think what was massive was the players coming over to the end. Like, the fans were being like, come closer. Like, and Ekwa giving his kind of his bowing down. And that relationship was beginning to crack, because, look, let's be honest, some of them weren't putting in what we expect. And it's a cliche, but it's accurate. They put that in yesterday. They threw their bodies on the line a bit, and we found that bond again with him that was beginning to have cracks, and we've put glue in it till Friday, shall we say?
Absolutely. Phil Smith mentioned this after the game when we were travelling home. We'll come on to the intricacies of the tactics and stuff, but in terms of a Sunderland performance, that's all we ever asked for, really, wasn't it? In terms of hard work, determination, running. Things can go wrong in a game, but they kept it. I actually thought, you mentioned about the relationship with the players there. I thought Jack Clark's celebration was brilliant, because he did the cupping of the ears, but it wasn't. A neutral might look at that and think he's giving it back to the Sunderland fans, but he wasn't. It was, I want to hear you, please get louder. Like, it was actually a brilliant moment. You could see in his face that he was absolutely loving it, delighted to score. I mean, anybody who looks at him and thinks he isn't happy at Sunderland needs their head examining, because he does clearly love it. And I thought that celebration was a real good moment, as you mentioned, between the fans and the players.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, talking about Clarkey, like, oh, what a wonderful footballer, by the way. Like, I love him. Like, the day he does go, I'm gonna be absolutely heartbroken.
But he's won that game for Beale. Let's sort of not beat around the bush. We weren't 100%. Scoring. We weren't scoring, and Pritchard had just got up front with 3 strikers on the bench. So I was struggling to see where a goal was coming from, to be honest. It was a moment of individual brilliance, which, fair play, that's what Clark's in the team to do.
No, 100%. And I think, for me, Clarkey, and you see it in his celebration, and people talked an awful lot about the Southampton celebration because it was just after the transfer window, September the 1st, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
For me, I think Clark just wants to play football. I think if the club we've had a bid accepted for 25 million, and go, all right, I'll go chat to them. I think he just likes playing football. I think he's just a young kid that's enjoying his football again after a couple of years of, been in the wilderness at Spurs, really, a couple of failed loan moves, and he's came to a massive club that absolutely worship him, and people are talking about him like, how can he not be happy? But I think you're talking about the goal and stuff like that, and I think the goal was massive and the end was massive. But I don't know if you noticed it, but Job was shown off in front of his big brother a little bit. But when we were really piling the pressure on, you'll have seen it as well, but I don't think a lot of people will have done. piling the pressure on, and you think, oh God, someone come on, there's 15 minutes to go here, just put something in the back of the net. And Job, I think we got like a corner or a throw in like deep in their half, and Job's just like that to the fans, and he loves it.
He loves it.
But he's feeding off the energy of the fans that are basically going, please, we're going to will this in. And that's a combination of the team playing well, the team responding to the fans, and then the team asking for even more to get us over the line. And it did. And ultimately, like, that's just what football's about. I mean, in the cold light of day, it felt like we won the World Cup yesterday. We beat Hull. But, like, that's what football's about for me. And I think that's what Sunderland's been about for the past 18 months to 2 and a bit years. That kind of connection with the players again, and kind of learning to love the football club. That's been tested in the past few weeks, and it'll be tested in the weeks to come. But it was good to see that it's possible that if things go the right way with Michael Beale in charge and with these players, the relationship can continue to be a blossoming, loving one.
Well, hopefully. And you say that it's just Hull City, and I know what you mean. But to be fair, they're a decent side this season under Liam Rossini. So to win away from home, given our away record this season, I was massively pleased by. Just into the tactics in the first half a little bit, Graham, I actually thought what was really pleasing was that, and Tri Hume mentioned this after the game, is that Sunderland didn't needlessly press Hull. They were quite happy for them to have the ball. I thought that was quite smart in a way, because I think Hull would have played around Sunderland pretty easy. That midfield just needed to sit in front of the defence, especially after having shipped 3 bad goals against Coventry City with, O'Nien and Ballard quite exposed at times in that game. I actually was really pleased with that tactical decision, whether it was Dodds, Beale, whoever it was, whether it was a group decision on the field, but they just allowed the game to settle. They didn't go too mad, didn't go too gung-ho. And you talk about the crowd as well. I mean, I do it myself when I'm in the crowd at Sunderland games. You want them on the front foot, they get into them, chants, all of that sort of stuff. You want Sunderland pressing. You want the Lee Barry Cattermole pointless press it into the defender with nobody else backing them up. That's what we as Sunderland fans like. But they didn't do that, and I actually thought we benefited from that, especially in the first half.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you talked about like wanting players to press and stuff. I think Seb Lawson made a career out of that. Sunderland just pressing really high up the pitch and absolutely knackering himself within like 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
He loved one of them. He loved one of them pointless presses, try and get the crowd up, throw his arms in the air. Nobody followed him. Just like, look at me. I'm doing something. I'm doing something.
Beautiful, Seb. He didn't even have to do anything. Could have just stood on the pitch and everyone would have loved him anyway. Little did he know. But I think when it comes to the tactics yesterday, they were good.
They were.
It was clever. The lad next to me said, "Oh, this is how Hull are playing. This is how we play at home." And I was like, "That's a good thing, though." And some people were going, "Oh, press it." And I was going, "Yeah, I don't think you need to." Because I think the fact that I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but Philogene not being there for Hull was really big, because I think he's their Jack Clark and kind of pull something out and out. And I think they probably do rely on that. I think most teams in the top 10 that aren't, the Premier League clubs in Ipswich, struggle to produce stuff without having that one moment of magic or the player that can produce something. Luckily, we've got a couple, but one that sticks out like a sore thumb. I think for Hull, it's Philogene, but they did try to play around us, but it was quite easy to break up. Maybe the only thing tactically which frustrates me, which I'm sure we're going to get down to, is when you do win the ball back, there's no one to really hold it up top because everyone's back. But is that Beale's fault? Look, at the end of the day, 3 managers have now looked at those strikers and thought they weren't good enough. And I'm not one to judge because I haven't seen them enough. I don't know. But they see them every day. And look, there's months and years to come, and these players can flourish and change. Although I've got my doubts about whether that will happen with Burstow. I think he might end up going back. But Mayenda, Rusin, and Hamir have all got time on their side. But I do think a performance like yesterday would have been a lot more comfortable with someone who could have released the pressure a little bit sometimes in the first half. But I think for what he's got, he did quite well. And for what it's worth, I'm gonna say something controversial. So tin hat on. I thought until he got injured, Bradley Dack did all right.
He did. He was doing fine. He wouldn't have been my choice from the beginning, to be brutally honest with you. But he sort of had a half chance on the volley, which was a really tough chance in the first half, which was spooned over the bar. But I mean, if he'd have rifled that in the top corner, fair play. It was a really tough chance. But I did think he was grown into the game. Mm-hmm. What do you make of this striker situation, Graham? Because obviously he decides to go with Dak up front. Job's playing just off him. Job's probably looked better as a striker Dak has, but he decided to go with that. You could argue whether it was working or whether it wasn't. But obviously, Dak then gets the injury towards the end of the first half. And he doesn't bring on a striker. He brings on Aushish. And in the second half, with Sunderland needing a goal and probably needing the ball to stick, he brings on Pritchard. Fair play, Jack Clark then rifles the ball in the Hull City net. I don't necessarily think that was a product of Bale's substitutions, to be honest.
No.
And I remember distinctly thinking to myself, like, we need somebody to hold the ball up, and the ball's just coming up to Pritchard, and it's either going over his head, and it's not a knock on Alex Pritchard. I think he's been brilliant, and I'd be advocating him starting had he not been ill these past couple of weeks. But I just thought, like, throwing him on at that point is a bit of a hiding to nothing. I do get the experience argument that, like, we're seeing out the game away at Hull on Boxing Day, you need an experienced player on the pitch, and he probably did help in that regard. But for me, it's damning, as you mentioned, the three sort of head coaches we've had in recent weeks: Mowbray, Mike Dodds, Michael Beale. They're not playing Mayenda, Roos, or Burstow. Somebody said to me on social media, how are we supposed to get a striker playing and scoring if we don't play any strikers at all? And it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? Because they're not ready, but are they going to get ready? Have we seen enough of them to know that they're not ready? We've probably seen enough of all of them now to know that they're not quite ready. But then how on earth are they going to get ready? It's a bizarre situation. And this is all framed in the context of Michael Beale's Sunderland needing to win games. Otherwise, he's under a lot of pressure.
I also think as well, like, you look at the model that Sunderland have, and it's young players come here, they get experience and they do well. Rusin was actually breaking that model a little bit because he's 25 and we paid a fee.
Yeah.
I think, look, the curse is, and I can't get through a podcast without saying his name anymore for some reason, but Ross Stewart was dynamite for Sunderland. Like,
yeah.
I worship that man. I always will. And I feel sorry for him that he's injured. But Ross brought a lot. He could hold the ball up. He was a sniffer. He could score from outside the box. He could score in the air. He was good in the air. He brought other players into the game. He could come.
It was the way Ross Stewart stretched defenses as well. That's something I think we really miss. And I think just poacher's instinct. There was a couple of times Patrick Roberts, who is yet to register a goal or an assist, which is actually probably only half his own fault because he flashed a couple of balls across the 6-yard box and there was nobody there attacking the front post. Ross Stewart, Nathan Broadhead would have been there.
Oh, I mean, Broadhead would have been. I would have had Broadhead here, like, in a heartbeat last season. But it's funny you mentioned Roberts. There was a point because, like I say, I was in row one yesterday, and you can see a lot more in row one. It's weird when it's like closed here, and Robert like takes on like 100 players that he always does because he's class, and then he puts the ball in, and it's cleared, and he's not angrily gesticulating at the players, but he's saying, "Get in the box." Like, nonnies are in, and like the reason they're not in the box is not their game. It's not really their game. I think that's why Joe probably looks decent as a striker, because sometimes he can hold the ball up and he can run a channel, which is a Ross Stewartism. He can stretch a bit more than the other ones can. But also because he thinks he's a number 10 / box to box. He does arrive in the box late sometimes, but he arrives in the box more than the other ones do that don't arrive in the box because they're not used to it. And I think we've got an abundance of riches there. I mean, I love Pritch. I think Pritch is great. I think Pritch brings so much. He'd be in my team every week. I think Aushish's got a heck of a lot of talent and will bring a heck of a lot. I'm delighted he's on a 5-year contract. Clarkey, well, we've talked about Clarkey, and I think Roberts is one of the most technically gifted players I've ever seen at the club. But and then you had Diallo last season, where he was like, Diallo. But you look at like the strikers we've got, and they're all like parts of a Ross Stewart. They don't actually do all of it. I think Rusin's quite good at stretching the defenses and running the channels a bit. I think he's quite good at that, but he doesn't really seem like a sniffer or a scorer or someone who's going to hold the ball. Burstow looks like he can hold the ball and play these back to goal, but it doesn't look like he's going to score many. He doesn't look like he can run that fast. Hemir just looks like,
miles off it, doesn't he, unfortunately?
He's so raw that if I was a cannibal, I'd be ill the next day. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I would not be well because he's so raw. And I think Mayenda as well, like, he's raw as anything. We need a striker, and yesterday doesn't paper over that crack. We need a centre forward, and we need a centre forward that can hit the ground running. He doesn't need to score 30 goals. I don't think you're going to get a replacement for Ross Stewart, because I think it's really hard to find a player that fits the way he did. But I would have been, and I know some people said, I would have never spent that money on him. But I'm led to believe that Ellis Sims was about 4 million, rising to 8 if they get promoted next Y and Z. Very rarely is the end fee. That's a fair point.
Sounds like a detective agency. Thanks, Ian.
What kind of detective agency though? What would we be discovering? But even like Simsy, I would have brought in. I've never called him Simsy in my life. I would have brought the likes of Ellis Sims in, because he was just, Sims lacked something, but he was a bit of a sniffer and he could run a channel. And I think the way Coventry play him is completely different to the way we play him. There's a reason he scored 2 for them and 7 for us. But somebody like that, like just someone that you go, yeah, he knows where the net is. He's going to get in the box and just ask a question of the centre half, because at the minute we don't ask enough questions of the centre halves.
No, absolutely. We've got quite a few comments here on X, YouTube, and Facebook, so we'll just have a little look through them. On X, somebody says, after 2 games under Beale and the Mags free-falling, what do you think the result will be now? I suppose we better talk about that little old game on the 6th of January. I'm looking forward to this, less and less as the days go on, I think, especially given the away ticket allocation, the fact that Newcastle United fans are going to be in the Black Cats bar, which is something I cannot get my head around. And for what it's worth, without having read the minutes, which are not yet public knowledge, although the club did answer some of the questions put to them by the Red and White Army, I can't see how giving Newcastle fans the Black Cats bar is anything other than a Sunderland decision. They would have to sign off on that. I don't think the authorities come to Sunderland and say, can you give Newcastle fans the Black Cats bar? I don't think that happens. We've never seen that. We've never seen it happen before. So either Newcastle have asked and Sunderland have said yes, or Sunderland have offered. So that really baffles me, and it's not pleasant really that I'm hearing that some Sunderland fans just aren't going to go to the game. They're not going to bother.
I've heard that, yeah,
because they're in the North Stand. They're not going to bother, or because they think it's a potential tinderbox and an accident waiting to happen, and they've got kids. They're just going, nah, not for me. And a lot of people have looked at the board and the outcome of this ticket allocation have just gone, do you know what? I'm not interested. And I can understand that. So for me, I was very excited when the draw was made, but that's sort of taken the shine completely off it for me, because, I mean, just being realistic here, yes, the FA Cup is a leveller. It's a derby match, so that's a leveller. Third round. Newcastle United are a Champions League team. Sunderland are a Championship team. So it was always going to be difficult for Sunderland to beat Newcastle. But then you're going to have 6,000 Newcastle fans in the stadium celebrating the first derby win since 2016, I think, or we haven't beaten them since. They haven't beaten us since for a long time. I can't remember the exact. A lot
of things have happened since they last beat us, and the fact that you can't remember it says a lot.
I know. I think it's a lot earlier than 2016. I think our 9-game unbeaten run started in 2016. I'm getting mixed up, but anyway, my point is that the chances are they're going to beat us, but they're going to have the opportunity to really rub it in and take the Michael, which, I mean, Christ, they're entitled to do. That's the way fandom works, but just can't help feel that this could have all been handled a lot differently. And really, I don't think the result really matters now because of what's gone on, which is a crying shame, because it should have been a really, really good footballing spectacle.
We talked about disconnect between players, new manager, fans. That was starting to be there. The biggest disconnect is coming between Kirill and those decision makers over this. And I sit in the southwest corner. I'm fine. I'm sound.
Yeah, but August 2011 since the beat us. Sorry.
Lol. Yeah, very long time. Look, it's a tough game. I think if you're looking at the result, to answer the question first and foremost, I'll answer this in the most diplomatic way. The match really matters because it's, in my opinion, the biggest derby in England. But Michael Beale's tenure is not going to be decided on what happens against Newcastle unless he gets absolutely destroyed and he's followed by getting beat at Rotherham and will get beat a few games afterwards. Ultimately, Paulo beat Newcastle and it was a disaster. Like, every manager on the Sun beat Newcastle, and then a few weeks later, like, it was it was poor, apart from maybe Sam Allardyce. So I don't think it's going to hinge on Sunderland's future too much. Would I like to beat them? Well, where does the bear do his business? That's my thought process on it. But I think looking back at what you're saying before about the ticket allocation, look, it isn't Newcastle's fault. I'd love to blame everything on them, but like I can't. No. Like, you're going to take as many as you can get, and I understand all their fans wanting to go because that match means a lot to them. They've got a really good chance of winning in their rivals' backyard. And
I think the thing is about that, Graham, as well, is that Newcastle as a club have represented their fans' interests, which is fair enough. That's what the football club's supposed to do. But have Sunderland represented their fans' interests, especially by not consulting with the Red and White Army in the process leading up to it? I understand it was a quick turnaround, but yeah, Phil Smith, my colleague, mentioned, I think there's a lot of bridges to be built there now.
Huge. I mean, first and foremost, we need to discuss the fact that, like, allegedly, I mean, I don't know, I haven't looked at it, but if you look at the Black Cat's Bar and what Newcastle are being charged, I'm pretty certain that's a higher amount. Like, you could be like, haha, look, he's charging them more. But to me, that strikes as someone who wants the money from it. This is not Club Wembley, Kirill. This is Sunderland versus Newcastle.
That's Sunderland fans' space. That's where the Black Cat's Bar typically is where probably your higher end customers are going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
You want to make some money. You want to keep them happy, really, in the long term. And they're not going to have the opportunity to go in the Black Cat's Bar.
When you look at the game as well, right now, I'm probably going to go a bit too deep here, but people, like, living up in Scotland, it's a bit different. I'm outside of that Sunderland Newcastle bubble. I'm over in the Rangers Celtic bubble, but people say to me, "Oh, come on, you're just saying, you don't want to be taken over by who Newcastle been taken over by because it's them." And I always go back to what my football club means to me. And do I think a lot of Sunderland fans wouldn't care who they're taken over by? Of course I do. I don't think everyone's different. There'll be a lot of fans that don't care. But for me, the reason I wouldn't want that to happen is because I'm Sunderland through and through. And the reason I'm Sunderland through and through is because I went with my dad when I was a kid. I sat on his shoulders in the Forwell end or the Walker end. And ultimately, it became my community and it became a working class place where everyone was together and I felt part of something. That's the basics. I could go deeper, but that's the basics. And I feel like I wouldn't want that community and its soul to be sold to anyone, period. So that's why I don't like what's going on up the road. And I mean, I don't really need a reason to not like what's going on up the road. I've been brought up that way. That's just the way I am. However, when you look at what Sunderland are doing and what allegedly security, whoever's made this decision to let Newcastle fans in the Black Cat's Bar and let them in the season ticket holders' seats and give them that amount, that's against the very essence of what is Sunderland. Like, you don't, like, look, rightly or wrongly, look, I know this sounds like I'm a 4-year-old and, like, I don't like them, they don't like me, but they don't sit in our seats. That's not how it's meant to be. It's never how it's meant to be. And I would never expect Newcastle to do it for us.
No, and I mean, especially not in the modern day. Like the days of taking ends at football grounds are supposed to be over.
You'd think so, but like to me, I would have thought, like, and you know what? Take Newcastle in this decision out of the equation. How come Middlesbrough and Leeds was unsafe to have any more than about 2,000, but Newcastle can have 6,000 and they've bent over backwards for them? Like, for me, I'd much rather Leeds have 10,000 than 10,000 for Borough. Like, let them have as many as they want for teams. I don't care if it's safe, but you can't say one's safe and the other one isn't. And I have to be careful what I say here, but it goes back to, who's in charge of security here that's made that decision and how they've came to that decision. Baffled.
Yeah, I will be really interested to see the minutes. Obviously, Sunderland referenced the minutes will become public knowledge at some point. So we do have to be careful what we say, and we do have to mention that it is a joint decision-making process between Sunderland, Newcastle, the safety board, which will include fire service, police, ambulance, all of that sort of stuff. So perhaps we're laying the finger of blame wrongly, and we don't know all the information yet. But from the information we have been given, I don't think it's unfair to make the assumptions that we've made. To be honest, I think it's quite fair, balanced, and accurate.
I just don't think it's just right with me. I think everyone's doing exactly the same thing. You get all the evidence that you have to hand, and you think, right, X, Y, and Z, and you try and be balanced with it, and you think, right, we've got it. A lot of people have gone, you have to give that away. What's the club meant to do? The same as they did for Leeds and Middlesbrough, say it's not safe, because it isn't.
Yeah, and that 15% allocation rule, although it is important for the FA, it's not the law. You can come in under that because Sunderland have already reduced the allocation for Newcastle at 6,000 anyway. If it was by the letter of the law at 15%, it should be about 8,000.
I went to Borough a few years ago in the FA Cup replay when Seth scored. We got like 4,000, and that felt like, whoa, 4,000? Really? Okay, we'll take it. We knew we were entitled to more. And I mean, I know Man United in the League Cup, we got like 9,000 and stuff like that. But just for me, it doesn't feel right. And if it is safe, then please answer me why it wasn't safe for Leeds fans. I mean, they did the whole consultation about moving the away fans and then decided just to do the same thing instead of just putting a net up.
I know. A couple of the best away support I can remember at the Stadium of Light, just off the top of my head during my time, would be Carlisle in must have been a Carabao Cup game. They were absolutely superb. I can't remember off the top of my head how many fans they got, but it felt like a lot. It felt like
FA Cup third round.
It felt like 6,000 or 7,000. Maybe it was slightly more, maybe it was slightly less. But they had the whole of that top Premier concourse.
That's right.
And it was administrated safely. The other two that I can think of are FA Cup quarter-final Everton. They were housed in the South Stand, and I think they got about 8,000. And they were literally housed from the corner to the corner. There was hardly a row of seats between Sunderland and Everton fans. They were absolutely amazing on the night, Everton fans, in terms of in the stadium, outside the stadium. And I know it's slightly different because it's going to be a bubble trip, but it was all hell broke loose. It was crazy. The other game I can think of is the Celtic game pre-season when we were relegated to the Championship and Celtic brought down about 8,000 fans. Again, different situations because there's going to be a bubble trip with Newcastle, but that was absolute chaos in and around Sunderland that day. So, yes, I think there are a lot of safety concerns. And just logistically as well, I think we've mentioned it on the podcast already. You've probably mentioned it on yours, but how on earth are you going to get 80 coaches in and out of Sunderland at the same time without problems? Like, people, this rivalry is quite the rivalry, and it's quite heated. And most rational people aren't stupid enough to hoy bricks at coaches, but it happens, and people are stupid, and people have that strength of feeling where, like, I don't think it's particularly the best thing to happen for Newcastle fans either. Like, we all want this derby to be good, everybody to have a good, safe experience, to have your laugh, to swear at the opposition fans, but that's all it is, or what most fans want it to be. But there are some that want to take it further, and I just feel like this game does provide a good opportunity for mischief.
Of course it does. And you got to bear in mind we haven't played each other for about 8 years or something like that. So like nothing about it seems right, and I think the same applies to Newcastle fans and Sunderland fans. I think you cannot kid us on. Like, you can't. We know when something's not right and something's not up to scratch. And look, again, got to be careful with what I say here, but the security's never been that brilliant over the past few years with Sunderland. There's been a few incidents where people have felt they haven't been treated correctly, and I'll leave it at that. But this smacks in the face of the soul of what Sunderland Association Football Club is, and there's too much evidence to the contrary of allocations being restricted for us just to suddenly go, okay, like, look, if Leeds and Middlesbrough bought like 4,000 and got their max capacity and they're gone, look, we've looked at it, it's safe, I'd probably have a little bit more understanding of why Newcastle was here. I'd still not be happy that fans moved out the seat, but I'd be like, well, there's not much the club can do if that's kind of security have said this, and we've done it for other teams, and now it would look petty if we reduced it. At this point, I just think you look at the amount of away fans that have been reduced for other clubs, and suddenly Newcastle, for want of a better word, we have rolled out the red carpet and said, enjoy yourself. But
this is the thing as well, Graham. You mentioned there, but Newcastle have never had 8,000 fans at the Stadium of Light. It's never happened. It's unprecedented. So how can it be deemed safe? It's like it's never happened before. So I mean, they must be confident in the safety measures, I guess. But yeah.
I mean, as unlikely as it is, look, and I'll be honest, like you said before, they're a Champions League team on a bad run of form. They're still a Champions League team with quality across the pitch. We're a Championship team that's playoff hopefuls. So on paper, it should be pretty straightforward for Newcastle. However, if it's not, the one positive you have got is there is 6,000 of them that you can laugh at.
yeah, that is
as
true.
unlikely as it is.
That is true. Well, we are approaching, Graham, 40 minutes on this podcast, so we'll probably wrap it up there. That felt quite cathartic, actually. Please tell us where we can find your podcast and do me a little closing spiel before I do my own.
I can do, no problem at all. I would say don't listen to us, first and foremost. You have been warned, but it's
I would say don't listen to Dave Lawrence. That would be my advice.
You should really say don't listen to Dave Lawrence. I almost said listen 3 times and called him Dave Listen, which is a new moniker, I guess. But it's where are we again? Oh yeah, so YouTube, Spotify, Apple, like the place you normally get it, and it's just What the Falk Podcast. It originally wasn't planned to be around my name, and I wanted to change it to something more Sunderland-esque, and people wouldn't let me do it, so it's stuck. The narcissist that I am. And you can follow us at What the Falk Pod, which is on Twitter /X. The only thing is, if you do follow us, bear in mind, if you give us a negative comment, I will run with it. I will have a lot of fun with it, and I do enjoy it. So if you do follow us, please leave a negative comment so I can enjoy myself.
Well, you heard it first. Please batter Graham on Twitter and social media is what I heard.
It's what social media is for, isn't it?
It is. Well, thank you for listening to this cross-promotion podcast between the Sunderland Echoes, The Raw, and Graham Falk's What the Falk podcast. You can also find all of the Sunderland Echo content all over the internet, and that's as far as I'll go, because it's literally everywhere, and I can't really be bothered. I'm still full of Christmas dinner, and I can't really be bothered to.
Have you heard of the internet? It's on the internet.
Yeah, it's somewhere. If you just type in words on a engine somewhere,
if you find a laptop, press buttons, you'll find it.
Yeah, or maybe one of those, like, one of those string telephones with a cup. If you just shout Sunderland Echo down there, I'm sure like some player ratings or something will come up.
Excuse me, is a Sunderland Echo there? No, mate, you've got the wrong number.
Anyway, we'll leave it there because we are seriously digressing. Graham, I hope you've had a fantastic Christmas, and all the best to you and your family. All the best to all Sunderland fans the world over, and we'll see you on Friday for the game against Rotherham United. Thank you once again for listening.